Hello everyone. Welcome everyone to the channel, Strange Night Podcast. Episode 1, The Dead Man's Shaft Curse. Our story begins in Goldfield, Nevada, an old mining town whose glory days have long since faded. The desert night is cold and eerily silent, broken only by the sound of the wind whistling through the rotten wooden frames of abandoned structures. Our protagonist is Jake, a tough but ambitious mining engineer who has secured funding to relaunch an area infamous for its reputation, the Dead Man's Shaft. The name is no coincidence. It was the site of the most horrific tragedy in the area in 1893, burying 27 miners in a sudden, catastrophic collapse. On their first night at the new mine site, Jake and his two associates, Max, the explosives expert, and Sarah, the geologist, set up camp right at the mouth of the shaft. Max is the first to sense something is deeply wrong. He swears he hears a faint sound of chipping and hammering coming from deep underground, even though the machinery hasn't been started yet. Sarah, a practical scientist, dismisses it, suggesting it's just the sound of metal contracting due to the cold night temperature. The next day, as they venture deeper into the old tunnels, the temperature inside does not drop as expected. Instead, it's unusually warm, faintly smelling of sulfur and old sweat. They discover a new crack in the rock wall, which appears not to be geological, but caused by an incredibly strong internal force. When Sarah uses her geological scanning equipment, her devices begin to malfunction violently. The screen displays inexplicable vibrational signals, not earthquakes, not equipment failure, but a steady, deep pulse beneath their feet, like the heartbeat of a massive monster. Jake, driven by his gold fever, pushes them to proceed further into the old collapse zone. They are forced to crawl through a narrow crevice leading to a small rock chamber. It is here that they find the first evidence of the curse. In the corner of the chamber lies a small wooden chest, ruined by groundwater and time. Inside is an old, damp, leather-bound journal, carefully wrapped. The yellowed pages contain scrawled, hard-to-read entries, detailing the final days of the trapped miners. They didn't die quickly. They endured starvation and despair. The final entry in the journal, written in a dark brown liquid, which they later realize is dried blood, is a detailed and terrifying curse. "We were abandoned. We were forgotten. This gold is our blood, and it shall never belong to another. He who takes but a speck of dust shall forever lie here. Our last breath is the curse, and the darkness is the keeper of the word." Immediately after reading these lines, Sarah feels a sudden, intense chill run through her, despite the persistent heat in the chamber. She turns back and sees a tall, blurry figure standing at the crevice entrance, its face obscured in shadow. It lasts only a moment, but it's enough to freeze her to the spot. They quickly retreat, taking the journal with them. As they pass through a newly shored-up wooden tunnel, Max suddenly feels a powerful, invisible force push him from behind. He stumbles and nearly falls into a deep, uncovered pit. He swears he heard a dry, rasping laugh right next to his ear. That night, as they study the journal under the camp lights, Jake becomes more obsessed than ever. He believes the curse is nothing more than the idle threats of crazy, dying men. He makes a decision. Tomorrow will be the day they set the first charge to blast their way into the main gold vein. But as they discuss their plans, something horrifying happens. On the rock wall right behind them, illuminated by the flashlight, a blood stain suddenly appears. The blood doesn't drip. It seems to seep out from within the solid rock, forming an ancient symbol identical to one of the drawings in the leather journal. The symbol for soul seal, or spirit containment. The three look at each other, The fear no longer a myth, but a chilling, cold reality. They are confronting something that cannot be destroyed by hammers or dynamite. The episode ends with Jake, with the wild, haunted look of an obsessed man, tightly clutching a stick of dynamite. He turns to the trembling Sarah and Max and says, his voice hoarse, "Whether it's ghosts or a curse, the only thing they want to protect is the gold, and we are going to take it." He starts walking back into the dark tunnel, his footsteps echoing in the stillness, leaving Max and Sarah with a choice: run or follow Jake into the dead man's shaft. Episode 2, The Phantom Hitchhiker of Route 66. The story shifts to Arizona, where the fiery sunset gives way to the cold, vast loneliness of the desert night. Ethan and Maya, a young couple, are on a romantic cross-country road trip in their classic 1967 Chevrolet Impala. They chose to drive along the old Route 66, seeking out historic stops and nostalgia. Everything changes on a night of dense fog near the town of Seligman. The road stretches endlessly, with no light save the dim headlights of the Impala. Suddenly, they spot a woman standing on the roadside, hitchhiking. She wears a faded, outdated blue dress from the 1950s and a worn coat, carrying no luggage. Ethan, good-natured and sympathetic, pulls over. Maya feels uneasy immediately. She whispers, "Honey, look at her. She looks like she just stepped out of an old photograph." The woman silently gets into the back seat, offering no word of thanks. She just sits there, head bowed, her long black hair obscuring most of her face. The atmosphere in the car instantly becomes heavy. Despite the working air conditioning, Maya feels an intense chill running down her spine. "Where are you headed?" Ethan asks, looking through the rearview mirror. The woman simply raises her hand, pointing forward towards a few abandoned ghost towns a few miles ahead, where old gas stations and motels are mere shadows of the past. When they arrive at the ghost town, the woman suddenly vanishes. Ethan just begins to ask, where did she say she wanted to get off? When Maya turns to the back seat and exclaims, "She's gone!" The car doors are still closed, and neither of them heard a door open or shut. The only thing left on the clean leather back seat is a patch of dry mud that smells foul, almost like sulfur. From that moment on, their journey turns into a nightmare. Every time they drive past mile marker 131, the old radio abruptly switches on with a static shriek, and a woman's whispered voice rings out. "Stop. Please. Stop." They try to ignore it, but the haunting escalates. On the third night while driving, Maya looks into the rearview mirror and sees the image of the woman in the blue dress sitting in the back seat, clearer than ever. This time her head is not bowed. Her face is pale white, her eyes hollow and filled with hatred. She seems to be staring right through Ethan and Maya. Maya screams, forcing Ethan to pull over. When they both turn around, the back seat is empty again, leaving only the patch of dry mud. They decide to investigate mile marker 131. At a surviving local diner, the old waitress tells them a local legend. In 1957, a girl named Amelia was picked up by a killer hitchhiker at mile marker 131. He then caused a crash and abandoned her in the burning car. She died before the police arrived. The legend says Amelia never left the road, her spirit eternally seeking a new ride. Ethan and Maya attempt to escape the curse by leaving Route 66, taking the modern interstate highway. But as they accelerate, the Impala begins to react violently. The engine screams, the headlights flicker, and the steering wheel violently pulls itself towards the east, back toward Route 66. The climax arrives while they are fleeing. The car suddenly locks its doors automatically. Maya sees the most terrifying thing. The dry mud patch on the back seat is spreading. No longer just mud, but grave dirt. And then, a pale, emaciated hand slowly rests on Maya's shoulder, as if trying to drag her back. The whispering voice in the car is no longer just, "Stop." Now it's a furious growl. "You picked me up. Now you belong to me. Come with me, forever." Ethan slams on the brakes, fighting desperately with a violently rotating steering wheel. In the flashing light of the flickering headlights, they clearly see Amelia's reflection in the mirror. Her face is distorted by the fire and her final terror, her tongue grotesquely hanging out, trying to touch their skin. Fortunately, the car crashes into a road barrier, the impact violent enough to shake Amelia loose and make her temporarily vanish. The doors unlock automatically. Both of them scramble out of the cursed car. When they look back, the Impala is driving itself backward down Route 66, driverless. It then stops exactly at mile marker 131. The back door slowly swings open, inviting the next victim for a ride. Episode 3, The Vampire Farmhouse. The story takes us to a remote, rural area of Rhode Island in the 1980s. The Harrington family, parents, David and Eleanor, and their teenage daughter, Lydia, have just moved into an ancient farmhouse dating back to the 18th century, known for its isolation and chill. They seek a peaceful life, but find instead a terrifying, forgotten ritual. The strange occurrences began within the first week. They kept a few dairy cows and goats. The next morning, they found a goat dead in the barn. The scary thing wasn't the death itself, but how it died. Its body was pale and shriveled, with no obvious wounds, yet all the blood had been mysteriously drained. David initially dismissed it as a clever predator, but there were no footprints or signs of a break-in. At night, Lydia, the daughter, began to hear peculiar sounds. They weren't the usual creaks of an old house, but a wet, sucking sound from outside her bedroom window, followed by a faint, gasping whisper from the cellar below. She told her parents, but they attributed it to imagination fueled by stress. Then, Eleanor began to be affected. She started deteriorating rapidly. Her face became deathly pale, her lips turned blue, and she was constantly exhausted, despite adequate sleep. Doctors couldn't find a cause, attributing it to unusual anemia. One evening, when David went down to the cellar to fix a pipe, he found a cleverly concealed, unnamed grave paved over in the dirt floor. Intrigued, he began to dig. Inside, he found the remains of a woman buried in a strange, horrifying manner. The body was buried face down, and a flat wooden stake, likely oak or pine, was driven through the heart. A chill went down David's spine. He recalled the ancient New England legends of the consumptive, people suspected of being vampires after death, and how the only way to stop them from returning to drain the living was to bury them face down and stake their heart so they couldn't rise and blood couldn't pool in their chest. Since the discovery of the grave, the haunting intensified dramatically. David began seeing a pale, gaunt figure of the woman walking through the house at night, her eyes fixed on the sleeping Eleanor. One night, he decided he had to confront the horror. He took a flashlight and a shovel and returned to the cellar to inspect the grave one last time, hoping that the exposure of the soul would banish it. When he dug again, he made a discovery that froze his blood. The wooden stake had been pulled out of the skeleton's sternum, and beneath the grave, something had been digging its way out, leaving long, sharp fingernail marks in the dirt floor. It was not a trapped ghost. It was an entity that had been freed. David ran upstairs where he found Eleanor sound asleep. Standing beside her bed was the figure of the woman, the consumptive, bending over, her mouth unnaturally wide open, and a hideous sucking sound resonating. Eleanor let out a faint moan. Her life force was being drained even in her sleep. David screamed and lunged, but his hand passed straight through the translucent body. Lydia, awakened by the scream, walked into the room and saw the terrifying sight. The ghost was retreating, but it left two small, almost invisible wounds on her mother's neck, oozing a dark, viscous fluid. The ghost didn't completely disappear. It turned back to look at Lydia with sunken eyes, and instead of fading away, it slowly walked into the wall of the house. David understood the horrifying truth. The house was not merely haunted. The house was the seal that contained the vampire, and by uncovering the grave, he had broken the seal, allowing the entity to move freely within the walls and under the floors, seeking the living to sustain itself, starting with Eleanor. The episode ends as David and Lydia desperately try to drag the near-dead Eleanor out of the house. But as they open the front door, they see all their slain animals, the cows, the goats, standing in the front yard, turning to look at them with glowing red eyes and a chilling, uncanny smile on their animal faces. The vampire was not just a spirit. It controlled everything around the farmhouse. Episode 4, The Rotary Phone's Last Call. The setting shifts to Portland, Oregon. Alex is a college student with a passion for antiques and vintage technology. In a small, obscure thrift store tucked away in an alley, Alex purchases an old, black rotary phone. The phone looks pristine, but its cord is completely severed. Alex buys it merely for decoration for her old apartment. On the first night, the phone rests on her desk. Something inexplicable happens. At exactly 3 a.m., in the dead silence of the night, the phone rings out loudly. The classic, piercing and jarring sound of the bell makes it seem as if it is plugged in and connected to an active line. Alex, startled, picks up the receiver. On the other end is a trembling, gasping woman's voice, one she doesn't recognize.
"Please, I can't breathe. They are coming for me. 521. That's the code. 521.
Then a sharp scream, followed by absolute silence. Alex checks the phone again. The cord is still severed. No battery, no connection whatsoever. Yet the phone continues to ring, not hours later, but minutes later. The second call comes from a middle-aged man's voice, growling and filled with anger. "She can't hide. I know you're listening. Give me back the key before I have to come and take her again." The call ends with the metallic clink of something dropping. Alex begins to investigate her apartment and the history of the phone. She discovers that the phone came from an old house nearby where a series of tragic events occurred. The woman in the first call was the victim of a murder in 1970. She was strangled in that very house. The man in the second call was the subsequent owner who committed suicide after losing everything in a scam. The calls are not just warnings. They begin to attack Alex personally. The third call is a child's voice, high-pitched but chilling. The child says Alex's name, followed by private, horrifying details about a mistake Alex had tried to hide since childhood.
You spilled the medicine. You let her fall. Did you think you could run away?
Alex realizes this phone is not just replaying the last words of the dead. It is connecting the dead souls in the area to one another, and they are using Alex's deepest fears and secrets to gain power. Alex decides she must get rid of the phone. She wraps it in a thick towel and throws it into a public trash bin a few blocks away. That night, the phone doesn't ring. Alex breathes a sigh of relief. But when she wakes up the next morning, the rotary phone is back on her desk, exactly where it was. The towel has been unwrapped, and the metal dial is slowly turning by itself, as if an invisible hand is dialing a number. When it finishes dialing, it rings again. This time there's no human voice, only a cold, sighing breath right next to her ear, and the simultaneous whispers of dozens of voices, all uttering a single word. Come. Alex sees something terrifying outside her apartment window. Under the dim streetlight, the blurry shadows of the murdered woman, the suicidal man, and a small figure of the child are standing on the street, all looking up at her window, their faces pale and expressionless. They are no longer in the phone. They have used the phone as a gateway to return to this world. Alex rushes to the phone and tries to smash it with a hammer, but each time she strikes, the metal feels like steel, and the ringing of the phone grows louder, more ear-splitting, like an alarm siren inside her head. Finally, one last call comes in. Alex desperately picks up, hoping something will stop. The voice this time is her own, echoing and distorted, speaking slowly and terrifyingly. Now, you are the caller. We have been waiting for your call. As Alex looks down at her hand, she sees she is holding the phone, but her own fingers, not someone else's, are slowly dialing 521, the code the first victim uttered. The episode ends with Alex trapped. She has become the conduit for the dead. As the code is fully dialed, all the shadows on the street begin to walk up the apartment stairs, and the final telephone ring sounds. Not a ring, but a drawn-out, desperate scream for help, emanating from the phone on the desk. Episode 5, The Marionette Theater of Louisiana. The setting moves to New Orleans, Louisiana, a city known for its historic districts and voodoo lore. Elias Thorne is a wealthy art collector, particularly drawn to antiques with a dark history. He has just acquired an old marionette theater, sealed shut since the 1940s. The theater once belonged to Antoine LeBlanc, a talented but schizophrenic puppet maker. Legend has it that Antoine became obsessed with the idea that he could transfer human souls into his exquisitely carved wooden puppets. He believed that only with a real soul inhabiting them could his works achieve perfection. Elias brings the puppets back to his luxurious mansion with the intention of restoration and display. There are a total of 6 puppets, each representing a character in an old tragedy: the lover, the traitor, the nobleman, the servant, and 2 children. As soon as Elias places them on his work table, strange things begin. First is the scent. A heavy old perfume and the smell of musty oil paint permeate the room, appearing only when Elias is working with the puppets. Then come the sounds. Elias swears he hears long, drawn-out sighs and faint, hollow giggles emanating from the wooden mouths that never move. He dismisses it as mice or wind, but when he starts repairing the servant girl puppet, who, according to old records, was Antoine's betrayed lover, he discovers horrifying details. Beneath the rotting fabric, he finds thick black strands of hair attached to the puppet's head. Not doll hair, but real human hair. And deep inside the wooden chest, where the joints should be, is a tiny fragment of bone, carved to look like a minuscule heart. After Elias completes the restoration of the servant girl puppet, she begins to move. Not moving by herself, but small, subtle shifts. When Elias turns his back, he hears the sound of taut strings. He turns back, and the puppet's wooden hand has changed position, from a fist to a finger pointing directly at him. The more he restores them, the more lifelike and terrifying the puppets become. That night, Elias falls asleep in his study. He wakes up with a start to the sound of a tinny old music box playing from the corner of the room. The 6 puppets, still hanging on their stands, are no longer still. They are performing a silent, distorted dance, their soulless glass eyes fixed on Elias. Worse still, the puppets' faces have changed. They are no longer inanimate works of art. On the face of the lover puppet, Elias sees fear. On the traitor's face, he sees malice. Real human emotions have been etched onto the layers of oil paint. Elias finds Antoine's old journal. In it, the mad artist wrote about his final ritual. He didn't just transfer souls. He sealed 6 victims, people he believed had betrayed him, inside the wooden puppets. And to keep those souls contained, a new, vibrant master with strong life force was needed to continue to play with them. As Elias reads this, the door to his study slams shut, and all 6 puppets simultaneously fall to the floor. They are not broken. They begin to crawl and slither across the floor in a horrifying manner, not by strings, but by their stiff wooden joints. They start to surround Elias, their tiny giggles now turning into the sound of suffocated screams of agony. The puppets are trying to climb onto Elias, searching for an entrance. The servant girl puppet, with her wooden finger pointed at Elias, whispers in a chilling, desperate voice,
Help us, or become one of us.
Elias understands the terrifying truth. The victims' souls cannot escape. They are trapped and are desperately seeking replacement. And the new master is Elias, who brought them home and breathed new life into them. In a final attempt, Elias grabs a lighter and tries to burn the puppets, but the servant girl puppet is faster, leaping onto him and using her small, hard wooden hand to scratch and claw at Elias's neck. The episode ends as Elias's scratching and painful screaming are drowned out by the cheerful, rhythmic music box tune automatically playing in the locked room. The final light focuses on Elias, lying motionless on the floor. Beside him, the 6 wooden puppets stand upright, without strings. They have found their new master. Episode 6. The Final Seance at the Haunting Mansion. The story takes place at Blackwood Manor in rural New York, a crumbling Victorian structure infamous for its violent history and intense paranormal activity. The mansion has been sealed for nearly 50 years following a series of suicides and disappearances. Our protagonist is Dr. Vivian Holloway, a renowned parapsychologist, leading a team of 3 into Blackwood Manor with a bold objective. Not just to prove the existence of the supernatural, but to conduct an all-night seance to permanently exorcise the inhabiting spirit. Vivian's team includes Mark, the audio and video expert, and Clara, a medium capable of communicating with the other side. The moment they step inside, a physical sense of coldness and pressure engulfs them. The house is not merely cold, it is heavy, as if the air is made of lead. They set up the seance circle in the grand living room, where the rug is stained with old, dark patches. Blood, they suspect, Clara is the first to be affected. She closes her eyes and begins to tremble, her voice whispering ancient, incomprehensible words. As the ritual begins, Mark records intense paranormal phenomena, continuous flickering lights, small objects levitating, and a sudden, dramatic drop in temperature. Vivian reads aloud the words of exorcism, demanding the spirit depart. However, instead of weakening, the ghostly presence grows angrier. Suddenly, all the doors and windows in the living room slam shut and lock simultaneously, producing an echoing sound like a trap snapping closed. They are trapped. The spirit begins to attack them more subtly, not by moving objects, but by assaulting their minds. Mark, who has a guilty past, suddenly hears the slapping and screaming of his ex-wife echoing in his headset, sounds only he can perceive. Vivian is haunted by the image of her deceased sister, who died in an accident, standing in the corner of the room, calling her name with an accusing look. "You could have saved me." The spirit is not a victim. It is a tyrannical, malevolent entity known as the Gatekeeper, who feeds on souls and nurtures human despair. When Clara attempts direct communication, the entity violently possesses her. Clara jolts upright, her eyes wide open, now not her own, but two soulless black voids. The voice emanating from Clara's mouth is a deep, ancient growl, full of power. "You think you can cast me out? I am the foundation of this decay. I have collected souls here for a century. You are merely a late-night snack." The Gatekeeper reveals the manor's horrific secret. It was built on a nexus point of negative energy and is a place where souls are not just trapped, but imprisoned by a powerful entity. In a last-ditch effort to break free, Vivian uses a silver cross against the possessed Clara. When the cross touches Clara's skin, she lets out a pained shriek, and the spirit is momentarily pushed back. But the Gatekeeper does not leave. It manifests as a giant black shadow, twice the height of a man, hovering above the ceiling. It begins to lift Mark into the air. Mark screams as his body is drawn upward, his bones popping and cracking. In that moment of terror, Mark sees what the Gatekeeper is protecting. An old metallic door hidden beneath the rug, secured by rusty chains, emitting a faint red glow. Vivian realizes the entity's true purpose is to prevent anyone from discovering what lies beneath the cellar floor. The episode concludes as Clara, using the last of her strength, screams a warning in ancient Latin. Just then, Mark is violently hurled to the ground, unconscious. Vivian turns to look at the mysteriously glowing basement door and hears the Gatekeeper's voice echoing throughout the house, not from Clara's mouth, but from inside her own head. "You have broken the ritual. Now you must discover. Come down and become the foundation." All the lights go out. Only the faint red glow from the metal door beneath the floor remains. Vivian grabs her flashlight, determined to confront the door and the entity beneath. Episode 7. The Whispering Woods of Montana. The setting moves to Glacier National Park in Montana, a vast area fragmented by snow-capped mountains and dense forests. Riley is a solitary park ranger living in a remote lookout station. During a routine patrol, she discovers an unusual area deep in the woods, the Silent Zone. It is a circular area about half a square mile wide where all sound vanishes. When Riley steps in, the sound of her boots on the dry leaves is gone. The wind whistling through the pine trees is swallowed. The bird song, the insect buzz, all disappear. The silence here is not stillness. It is an acoustic void, a physical absence that feels suffocating. Riley tries to yell, but the sound barely leaves her throat. She notices something even stranger. All animals avoid this area. The trees in the silent zone grow unusually tall and appear to be bowing down, as if attempting to escape the ground. Riley returns to her station and researches old records. She finds a log from the 1920s about a local Native American tribe that once used this area for a special ritual called the Deep Silence. According to the legend, the tribe sought to seal an ancient demon, an entity called Mangeur d'âme, the Soul Eater, who could drive people insane with its whispers. To lock it away, the elders performed a self-sacrifice ritual. They offered their lives and all their sound to create a perpetual containment barrier. The silence was the gate, and also the prison. Riley returns to the silent zone with advanced recording equipment. This time, she carries her rifle and a large brass bell. As soon as she enters, her equipment instantly glitches. She tries to strike the bell. The chime sounds distorted, weak, and dies immediately. But in that brief moment of sound, Riley swears she hears a grotesque, furious shriek in response, not with her ears, but with her bones. While she is struggling, a deer suddenly runs straight into the silent zone. Instantly, the animal stops, its eyes wide, and it begins to ram itself violently into a tree, committing suicide without uttering a single cry of pain. Riley realizes that the demon is trying to break the seal. Somehow, the entity is using the silence to pull and suffocate the spirit of creatures that enter. She finds the center of the silent zone, an ancient stone circle with carved Native American symbols, and in the middle, a deep, pitch-black hole. At that moment, Riley feels the silence attacking her. She feels the sound of her blood rushing in her ears so loudly, it's painful, and the voice inside her head begins to distort. The whispering voice, "Be quiet. Listen. Offer yourself. Just be silent." In a panic, Riley runs. But as she runs, she feels an invisible suction force pulling her back to the center of the stone circle. She cannot run fast, and her breath grows heavy. As she struggles to cross the boundary of the silent zone, she looks back and sees something rising from the deep hole. It is not a ghost, but a distortion of the air, a dark mass with no clear shape, yet she feels its terrifying presence. The entity makes no sound, but Riley hears a booming, echoing sneer in her mind. Finally, Riley bursts past the boundary. Instantly, sound rushes back. The wind, the insects, the rustling leaves. But with it, she hears a voice from behind her. No longer a whisper, but a loud, painful scream. The very scream she had tried to utter while inside the zone. Riley turns back. She doesn't see the Soul Eater, but she sees her own brass bell rolling out of the silent zone. And on a nearby tree, she notices an old, rusty warning sign that has had a message clawed into it with sharp nails. The silence is broken. The Soul Eater is free. The episode concludes with Riley, exhausted and traumatized, realizing that she didn't just escape the silent zone. She inadvertently carried a piece of it out, and now the Soul Eater has found its voice. Episode 8. The Ghost Ship of the Atlantic. The setting shifts to the Atlantic Ocean, approximately 200 nautical miles off the coast of New Jersey. A small commercial fishing vessel, the Neptune's Grasp, led by Captain Marcus, is recovering from an unexpected storm. After the storm clears, they discover something unbelievable. A large, three-masted merchant ship drifting aimlessly in thick fog. The ship's name is the Seraphina. Marcus and his two crew members, Owen and Finn, decide to board the ship to investigate and salvage. The moment they step onto the Seraphina's deck, they notice the absolute silence. Everything on the ship is strangely intact. The quarters are neat. Food is still on the table in the mess hall. Even a game of cards is half finished. Not a soul is aboard. The ship looks as if the crew left just minutes ago, yet it feels abandoned for decades. Marcus finds the Seraphina's captain's log in the cabin.
The early pages document a normal voyage from Europe to America, but the final entries become chaotic and terrifying. Day 14. All good, heavy fog. We saw a brilliant blue light beneath the water. Not a lighthouse. Day 15. Singing. Something is singing, not whales. It is chillingly beautiful. It beckons. Day 16. Thomas is gone. He said he had to go down and meet the singer. We found his clothes on deck. Everyone is starting to hear the singing. I must lock myself in the cabin. Day 17. Final entry. The first mate is gone. The men are going mad. I can't stand the singing anymore. I must answer the call. The ocean wants us. The ocean wants us all. Beware the song. After reading these words, Marcus feels a cold dread, but not from the weather. Darkness begins to fall. They decide to try and sail the Seraphina back to shore. As they start the auxiliary engine, which is strangely intact, a long, haunting wail resonates from the depths of the ocean. Owen, who is on the main deck, suddenly starts exhibiting strange behavior. He stares blankly at the water, his eyes vacant and distant. He mumbles, "So beautiful. They're waiting for me. They're singing for me." Owen tries to climb over the ship's railing. Marcus and Finn struggle to hold him back. As they wrestle, Finn looks up at the mast and sees blurry, translucent figures moving in the rigging and the surrounding fog. They are the ghosts of the Seraphina's former crew. They don't attack. They just stand there, faces pale and waterlogged, their eyes staring desperately at Marcus and Finn, as if pleading for replacement. As the singing from beneath the ocean grows louder and clearer, the ghosts move faster, creating an icy gust of wind on the deck. Finally, Owen is completely maddened by the singing. He tears free from Marcus and Finn, and with a horrifying smile on his face, he leaps into the frigid sea. Marcus and Finn watch in despair, but instead of seeing Owen sink, they see a brilliant blue streak of light flash beneath the water, followed by silence. They understand. The Seraphina is not abandoned. It is a trap, a spirit vessel cursed by an ancient oceanic entity. It continues to drift, passively calling new sailors with its enchanting song to replace the old crew. As Marcus and Finn desperately try to launch a lifeboat to escape the Seraphina, the door to the crew's quarters suddenly swings open. Standing there is Owen, who just jumped overboard. He is soaking wet, his hair plastered to his face, and his eyes are no longer his own. Owen speaks in a deep, echoing voice that is not his own. The ocean welcomes you. You don't have to swim. The voyage has begun. Take your posts, new sailors. And then, the ghosts of the Seraphina's former crew begin to float into the mess hall, the sleeping quarters, and the wheelhouse. They are taking their posts, smiling grotesquely and reaching out, inviting Marcus and Finn to join their eternal journey. Marcus and Finn realize their fishing vessel has vanished in the fog. They are trapped on the inescapable ghost ship. The episode ends with Marcus and Finn cornered. The hypnotic singing from the sea rises again, but this time it is no longer terrifying. It begins to sound like a soft, inviting lullaby, urging them to sleep. Episode 9. The Unborn Child of Texas. The setting moves to Marfa, Texas, a small, isolated town famous for its mysterious light phenomena. The story takes place at the old Presidio County Hospital, a decaying brick structure that has been closed since the 1970s. Our protagonist is Elena, a young nurse working at the new hospital, who has been assigned the task of managing and clearing out the archives at the old hospital before its scheduled demolition. As soon as Elena starts her work, she becomes haunted by the sound of a baby crying. The cry is not a scream of pain. It is a faint, persistent sobbing, usually echoing from the empty hospital corridors late at night. The hospital is rumored to be the place where a young mother named Clara lost her unborn child, or one who died shortly after birth in a tragic car accident right outside the hospital in 1968. The baby's soul is believed to be lingering, searching for its mother. Elena tries to trace the source of the sound. She notices that the crying always leads her to the old maternity ward, a western wing that has been sealed off with wooden planks. One night, when the crying becomes louder and closer, Elena decides to tear down the planks and enter. The sealed room is cold and filled with dust. There are a few old cribs, rusted medical instruments, and a strong smell of old antiseptic. Right in the center of the room is a classic wooden bassinet. As Elena approaches, the crying stops immediately. She looks into the bassinet. It is completely empty. However, when she touches the brittle, rotted blanket, she feels something hard underneath. She removes the fabric and finds the tiny skeleton of a newborn infant. It is curled up, almost unrecognizable, but unmistakably a human infant's remains. Along with the skeleton is a small personal journal hidden under the mattress. It is Clara's journal, the mother. In it, Clara describes the accident and her despair. She was gravely injured, and her child was dying. She wrote about a man in black who came to her bedside during her delirium, offering a terrible bargain. "I will save your life, but I must take the child's innocence. You will live, but it will never rest." Clara agreed. She survived, but the baby was forever bound to this place. Since reading the journal, the baby's cry has become more haunting and personal to Elena. It is no longer just a mournful sob. It starts calling her name. El-E-Na. Why did you abandon me? The paranormal activity in the hospital is not just auditory. The rusted medical tools in the maternity ward begin to vibrate on the tables. The room door automatically swings shut, locking Elena inside. Then, Elena begins to feel small, icy touches on her legs and arms, as if tiny fingers are trying to cling to her. She sees a small, smoky gray shape moving across the floor, darting into the dark corners. Elena desperately tries to get out of the room, but she hears the baby's cry turn into a playful, malicious giggle. When Elena looks back at the bassinet, she sees the tiny skeleton is no longer lying still. It has propped itself up, nothing but bones and shreds of cloth, but its empty eye sockets are fixed on her. And then, Clara's voice, the mother, echoes from the journal. It is looking for a new mother. Its soul is hungry for warmth. Elena realizes the horrifying truth. The baby does not want to find its mother. It wants to replace its mother. It wants a new, healthy soul to cling to. The episode ends as Elena manages to break down the door. She succeeds, but as she runs down the corridor, she hears not only the baby's cry, she hears the echoing, insane laughter of the man in black, the covenant broker, who bought the baby's soul. And right behind Elena, in the air, she sees a clear imprint of a baby's hand on the thick dust of the wall, as if it was just dragged away. Elena runs out of the old hospital, but the sound of the baby crying follows her. It is no longer staying in the hospital. Episode 10, The Final Key to the Void. Our central character is Dr. Arthur Finch, a reclusive folklorist and parapsychologist who has been secretly tracking the haunting cases across America. Dr. Finch has appeared in this series indirectly. He was the one who acquired the Miner's Journal from an antique dealer, Episode 1, the rotary phone from a traumatized seller, Episode 4, and it was he who warned Vivian Holloway about the danger of Blackwood Manor, Episode 6. He has realized a horrifying truth. All these stories are connected. Finch believes that all the haunted locations, the Dead Man's Shaft, Route 66, the Vampire Farmhouse, the Silent Woods, the Ghost Ship, and others, lie on nexus points of malevolent energy across the American continent. These souls and curses are not random. They are vessels, or keys, being manipulated by a single, central entity. His final clue leads him to an ancient, abandoned Gothic church on the outskirts of Boston, famous for its history of witch trials and old curses. Finch identifies this as the final nexus. He descends into the church's dark crypt. In the center of the crypt, he finds an ancient stone altar carved with demonic symbols. And then, the horrific arrangement is revealed. On the stone altar, all the cursed artifacts from the 9 previous stories are deliberately arranged. The blood-stained journal from the Dead Man's Shaft, Episode 1. The smashed rotary phone, Episode 4. The wooden stake pulled from the vampire's body, Episode 3. The half-burned servant girl puppet, Episode 5. The scratched warning sign from the Silent Woods, Episode 7. The infant skeleton from Texas, housed in a tin box, Episode 9. Somehow, the central entity has gathered all these keys. The moment Finch touches the altar, all the artifacts simultaneously glow with a dark energy. The crypt shakes, and Finch hears hundreds of chaotic voices, screaming, whispering, and cackling. All the souls we have encountered, the puppet's giggles, the hypnotic singing of the sea, the baby's cry, the miner's screams. From the center of the altar, a tall, black-robed figure begins to materialize, its shape blurry but possessing overwhelming power. It is the Covenant Broker, the entity that bought the baby's soul, and also the gatekeeper from Blackwood Manor. The entity looks at Finch with fiery, pupilless eyes, and its voice is a synthesis of all the voices Finch has heard, echoing and deep. "Welcome, Arthur. I have been waiting for my storyteller. You have helped me gather them all. You have connected the points, and now the gate is open." The entity reveals that it doesn't just want souls,
It wants to open a portal to another dimension, a void where it can harvest countless souls to reign supreme.
And it needed the stories, the horrors to be told and spread as the catalyst. Finch, in his role as the folklorist, has unknowingly served its purpose. When Finch tries to destroy the altar, the entity grabs his arm. No need to fight. You are the final key. You made all the stories. Now, you must be a part of them. The stone altar cracks, and a fiery, swirling black hole appears beneath it, swallowing the light. A powerful wind rushes through the crypt, pulling all the artifacts and souls towards it. In his final moment, Finch struggles against the spectral wind, seeing all the spirits he has studied rising from the black hole, no longer ghosts, but horrifying, distorted faces that are laughing. The episode ends with Dr. Finch being dragged into the black hole. Before he disappears completely, he screams a final warning, but his voice is swallowed by the entity and turns into a muffled, terrible chuckle. The screen fades to black and a final voiceover emerges, belonging to the original narrator, your voice. You see, the stories never die. They just need someone to tell them, and a soul to pay the price. The series American Shadows, a chronicle of the haunted, is over. Or is it only just beginning?